The wind howled like a wounded animal, tearing through the pines that surrounded the vacation home in the Colorado mountains. Snow fell in relentless sheets, blanketing the world in a white so thick it seemed to erase the edges of reality. I stood on the porch, my gloved hands gripping the railing, my breath visible in the freezing air. At 70, I'd seen my share of storms, both the kind that raged outside and the kind that tore through the heart. But nothing prepared me for this. My name is Eleanor Grayson, and this house, this sprawling, cedar-scented haven was mine. Not in the way most people own a home, with mortgages and paperwork that scream possession. No, this place was a piece of my soul, built with the sweat and dreams of my late husband, Henry, and me. Every plank, every stone, every window pane held a memory. We bought the land 30 years ago, back when our daughter, Claire, was just a girl with pigtails and a laugh that could melt the iciest winter. Back when love was simple and family meant everything. Claire was 42 now, married to a man named Greg, with 2 teenage kids of her own, Sophie and Liam. They were staying in my house for the holidays, a tradition I'd cherished since Henry passed 5 years ago. I'd invited them, as I always did, to fill the empty rooms with laughter and warmth. But this year, something was different. The air between us crackled with tension, like a wire stretched too tight. It started with small things. Claire's clipped tone when I offered to help with dinner. Greg's dismissive glance when I suggested a board game. Sophie's eye rolls, sharp as knives, when I told stories about her grandfather. Liam barely looked up from his phone. I tried to brush it off, chalking it up to the stress of the holidays or the weight of their busy lives. But deep down, I knew. They didn't want me here. Not really. The night of the storm, it all came to a head. We were gathered in the living room, the fire casting shadows on the walls. I'd spent the day cooking Henry's favorite pot roast recipe, the one Claire used to beg for as a child. I thought it would bring us together, a reminder of simpler times. But when I set the table, Claire barely touched her food. Instead, she sipped her wine and stared into the flames, her face tight with something I couldn't name. "Mom," she said finally, her voice low but sharp. "We need to talk." I froze, my fork halfway to my mouth. The kids were upstairs, their music faintly audible through the ceiling. Greg sat across from me, his arms crossed, his jaw set. The room felt smaller, the air heavier. "About what?" I asked, though I already dreaded the answer. Claire sighed, running a hand through her dark hair, so like mine had been before it turned silver. "This house. The holidays. You." She paused, as if the words were heavy on her tongue. "It's a lot, having you here all the time. We need space, Mom. As a family." The words hit like a slap. Space. From me. I'd given them everything this house. My time. My love. I'd spent weeks preparing for their visit, stocking the fridge, decorating the tree, making sure every detail was perfect. And now they wanted space. "Claire," I said, my voice trembling, "this is my home. I invited you here." She flinched, but her eyes didn't soften. "I know, Mom. But it's our vacation. We just want to relax. You know." Without, she trailed off. But the unspoken words hung in the air, "without you hovering." Greg chimed in, his tone colder. "It's not personal, Eleanor. We just think it'd be better if you stayed somewhere else for the rest of the trip." Somewhere else. In a snowstorm. The nearest town was 20 miles away, and the roads were already treacherous. I looked at Claire, waiting for her to contradict him, to say this was a mistake. But but she just stared at her plate, her silence louder than any words. I stood, my chair scraping against the floor. "Fine," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "If that's what you want." I didn't wait for a response. I grabbed my coat, my scarf, my boots, and stepped out into the storm. The cold hit me like a wall, but it was nothing compared to the ache in my chest. As I trudged through the snow, the lights of the house grew fainter behind me. I didn't know where I was going, only that I couldn't stay. The wind stung my face, and my legs ached with every step. I was 70, not frail but not young, and the storm was merciless. I thought of Henry, of the nights we'd spent in this house, planning our future, dreaming of the family we'd raise. How had it come to this? My own daughter, turning me out into the cold. I didn't know then that the house held a secret Claire had forgotten or perhaps never known. A secret that would change everything. The snow crunched beneath my boots, each step a battle against the storm's fury. My scarf was soaked, clinging to my neck like a cold hand, and my fingers ached inside my gloves. The vacation home was now just a faint glow behind me, swallowed by the blizzard. I didn't have a plan, only the instinct to keep moving, to put distance between me and the sting of Claire's words. Space. The word echoed in my mind, sharp and cruel. I'd given her everything me love, my home, my heart, and she'd sent me out into the night like a stranger. I thought of the past, of the summers when Claire would run through these woods, her laughter ringing like bells. Henry would chase her, pretending to be a bear, while I watched from the porch, a glass of lemonade in hand. Those were the days when love felt unbreakable, when family was a fortress against the world. Now, that fortress was crumbling, and I was the one left outside its walls. The cold seeped deeper, numbing my toes, my ears, my thoughts. I stumbled over a hidden root, catching myself against a tree. My breath came in ragged gasps, and for a moment, I considered turning back. But to what? To Claire's pitying eyes? To Greg's smug dismissal? No. I'd rather freeze than beg for their warmth. I remembered a small cabin about a mile from the house, a caretaker's lodge Henry and I had built years ago for overflow guests. It was basic, no electricity, no running water, but it had a fireplace and a roof. It would do. I adjusted my scarf and pressed on, the storm's howl drowning out the ache in my heart. The cabin came into view like a ghost, its outline barely visible through the snow. The door was stiff, frozen shut, but I shoved it open with my shoulder. Inside, the air was stale but mercifully still. I fumbled in the dark, finding the stack of firewood Henry had always kept stocked. My hands trembled as I built a fire, the matches slipping from my gloves. When the first flame caught, I nearly wept. Warmth crept into the room, chasing away the chill but not the loneliness. I sat on the floor, the firelight flickering across the rough wooden walls. The cabin was a time capsule. Dusty shelves held old books, a chipped mug, a faded photo of Henry and me, young and smiling, with Claire on his shoulders. I traced her face in the picture, her gap-toothed grin a reminder of the girl she'd been. Where had that girl gone? When had my daughter become a stranger? The storm raged on outside, but my mind drifted to the house. Claire didn't know the truth about it. Not really. She thought it was just a vacation home, a place we'd bought for weekends and holidays. She didn't know it was in my name alone, a decision Henry and I made after his diagnosis. He'd wanted to protect me, to ensure I'd always have a place to call home. Claire had been too young to understand, and later, too busy with her own life to care. The deed was locked away in a safe in the attic, a secret I'd never thought I'd need to reveal. But now, sitting in the dark, I wondered if it was time. not out of spite, but out of necessity. Claire had built a wall between us, and maybe the truth about the house could break it down or burn it to ash. I slept fitfully, the fire's warmth battling the cold that seeped through the cabin's walls. By morning, the storm had eased, leaving a world of glittering white. My body ached, but my resolve was sharper than ever. I would return to the house, not to beg, but to confront. Claire needed to know who she'd cast out, and what she stood to lose. The trek back was slower, the snow deeper. My breath hung in the air, and my heart pounded with a mix of dread and determination. As the house came into view, its chimney puffing smoke, I felt a pang of longing for the life we'd once had here. But longing wouldn't fix this. Only truth would. I knocked on the door, my knuckles stinging against the wood. Claire opened it, her face pale, her eyes wide with something like guilt. "Mom," she whispered, stepping aside. "You're back." "I never left," I said, my voice steady. "This is my home, Claire. And it's time we talked about what that means." The warmth of the house enveloped me as I stepped inside, but it did little to thaw the chill in my heart. Claire stood by the door, her arms wrapped around herself, her eyes darting between me and the floor. The living room was quiet, the fire from last night reduced to glowing embers. Greg sat on the couch, his phone in hand, but he looked up, his expression unreadable. The kids were nowhere in sight, probably still asleep upstairs. For a moment, no one spoke, the silence heavy with unspoken regrets. "Mom," Claire started, then stopped, her voice catching. "I didn't mean for you to leave like that. It was a misunderstanding." "A misunderstanding," I repeated, peeling off my wet scarf and hanging it by the door. My tone was calm, but the words carried the weight of last night's betrayal. "You asked me to leave my own home, Claire, in a snowstorm. That's not a misunderstanding. That's a choice." She flinched, her face crumpling. Greg shifted uncomfortably, setting his phone down. "Eleanor, let's not make this bigger than it needs to be," he said, his voice laced with that patronizing edge I'd come to loathe. "We just wanted a little family time. You're welcome here. Of course." "Welcome," I laughed, a sharp, bitter sound that surprised even me. "This is my house, Greg. Mine. Not yours. Not Claire's. Mine." Claire's eyes widened, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of uncertainty. "What are you talking about, Mom?" "This is the family vacation home. We all use it." I took a deep breath, steadying myself. The moment had come, and there was no turning back. "No, Claire. It's not a family home. It's in my name. Henry and I made that decision years ago, before he got sick. He wanted to make sure I'd always have a place to call my own. You were too young to understand then, and I never thought I'd need to explain it now." The room went still. Claire's mouth opened, then closed, as if she couldn't find the words. Greg leaned forward, his brows furrowing. "You're saying you own this place outright. No one else has a claim." "That's exactly what I'm saying," I replied, meeting his gaze. "The deed is upstairs, in the attic safe. You can see it for yourself if you don't believe me." Claire shook her head, her voice rising. "Why didn't you tell me? All these years. I thought this was ours. As a family." "I didn't tell you because I didn't think I had to," I said, my voice softening but firm. "This house was always meant for us to share. Claire. For you. For your kids. For all of us. But last night, you made it clear you don't see it that way. You don't see me that way." Tears welled in her eyes. But I pressed on. This wasn't about guilt. It was about truth. I've spent my life giving you everything. This house. My love. My time. And last night, you sent me out into a storm because I was, what? Inconvenient. A burden. No. Claire's voice broke, and she stepped toward me, her hands outstretched. Mom, I didn't mean it like that. I was stressed. Okay. Greg and I have been fighting. The kids are a handful, and I didn't know how to handle it all. I didn't think you'd actually leave. But I did, I said quietly. And I spent the night in the caretaker's cabin, alone, wondering how my own daughter could do that to me. Claire covered her mouth, tears spilling down her cheeks. Greg stood, his face a mix of defensiveness and unease. Eleanor, we're sorry. All right. Let's just calm down and talk this through. I'm calm, I said, my voice steady. But I'm done pretending everything's fine. If you want to stay in this house, we need to set some things straight. Starting with respect. The word hung in the air, heavy and undeniable. Claire nodded, wiping her eyes. You're right, she whispered. I'm so sorry, Mom. I didn't know about the house, about any of it. I messed up. I wanted to reach for her, to pull her into my arms like I did when she was a child. But something held me back. The hurt was still too raw, the wound too fresh. Instead, I nodded. We'll talk more later. I need to rest. I climbed the stairs to my room, my legs heavy with exhaustion. The house was quiet, but it no longer felt like home. Not yet. Maybe not ever again. The bedroom door clicked shut behind me, sealing out the world below. I sank onto the edge of the bed, my hands trembling as I unlaced my boots. The room was too familiar. The quilt I'd sewn with Henry's mother. The oak dresser he'd refinished. The framed photo of Claire's high school graduation on the nightstand. Every corner held a piece of my life. Yet I felt like a guest in my own home. The weight of the morning's confrontation pressed against my chest, heavy as the snow outside. I lay back, staring at the ceiling, the wooden beams a map of memories. I thought of Henry, his steady presence, his laugh that could fill a room. He'd always known how to bridge the gap between Claire and me, even when she was a moody teenager slamming doors. But he was gone, and I was left to navigate this chasm alone. I closed my eyes, willing sleep to come, but my mind churned with questions. Could I forgive Claire? Could we rebuild what we'd lost? And what did it mean to own this house if it no longer felt like a home? A soft knock startled me. Mom. Claire's voice was tentative, barely audible through the door. Can I come in? I sat up, smoothing my sweater. Yes, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. She stepped inside, her eyes red from crying. She held a mug of tea, steam curling upward, and offered it to me. I made this for you, she said. Chamomile. Your favorite. I took the mug, the warmth seeping into my hands. Thank you, I said, and we sat in silence for a moment. The tea a fragile bridge between us. I don't know where to start, Claire said finally, sitting on the edge of the bed. I keep replaying last night, and I hate myself for it. I was so caught up in my own head, Greg. The kids. Work. I took it out on you, and that wasn't fair. I sipped the tea, letting her words settle. It hurt, Claire. More than you know. This house, it's not just walls and a roof. It's everything your father and I built. Every memory we made here. With you. To be told I'm not wanted in it. I trailed off, my throat tight. I know, she whispered. I didn't mean to make you feel that way. I've been feeling so lost. Like I'm failing at everything being a mom, a wife, a daughter. I thought if I could control this trip, make it perfect for Greg and the kids, it would fix things. But I pushed you away instead. Her honesty disarmed me. I saw the weight she carried. The same weight I'd felt as a mother, trying to hold a family together. Claire, I said softly, you don't have to be perfect. Not for me. Not for them. But you have to see me. Not as some obligation, but as your mother. As someone who loves you. She nodded, tears spilling again. I do see you, Mom. I promise. I forgot how to show it. We sat there, the silence less heavy now. I wanted to believe her, to trust that this was a step toward healing. But trust, like snow, takes time to settle. The rest of the day passed quietly. I stayed in my room, resting, while Claire and the kids baked cookies downstairs. Their laughter drifted up, a sound I hadn't heard in days. It stirred something in my hope. Maybe. Or just nostalgia. When I finally went downstairs, Sophie and Liam were at the kitchen table, icing sugar on their noses, grinning at a tray of lopsided snowmen. Grandma, Sophie said, her voice bright. Want a cookie? We saved you the best one. I smiled, taking the kookia misshapen snowman with one eye. It's perfect, I said, and for the first time that day, I meant it. But as the evening settled in, I knew the conversation wasn't over. Claire and I had more to unravel, and Greg's role in all this was still a shadow in the room. The house might be mine, but family was something we'd have to rebuild together. The fire crackled in the living room, casting a warm glow over the worn leather couches and the Christmas tree in the corner. The storm had left a quiet world outside. The snow piled high against the windows. But inside, the house hummed with tentative peace. Claire and I had reached a fragile understanding, but the air still held the weight of unspoken truths. Greg, sitting in the armchair with a glass of bourbon, was the wild card. His silence during our earlier confrontation hadn't gone unnoticed, and I knew we couldn't move forward without addressing it. Dinner was simple leftover pot roast, warmed up with fresh bread. Sophie and Liam chattered about their day, their voices a welcome distraction. But as we cleared the plates, I caught Claire's eye and nodded toward the living room. She understood. It was time. Kids, why don't you go upstairs for a bit? Claire said, her tone gentle but firm. Sophie groaned but grabbed her phone, and Liam followed, his earbuds already in. Once they were gone, the three of us sat by the fire, Claire and me on the couch, Greg in his armchair, the bourbon glass still in his hand. Greg, I began, my voice steady. We need to talk about last night. You were part of that decision to ask me to leave. I need to understand why. He shifted, his jaw tightening. Eleanor, I told you. It wasn't personal. We just thought it'd be easier for everyone if we had some time to ourselves. Easier for who? I pressed. You're in my home, Greg. A home I've opened to you and your family every year. And you thought sending me out into a blizzard was easier. He set his glass down, his eyes narrowing. Look, Claire and I talked about it. We've got a lot going on, work. The kids. Our marriage. We needed a break. Not just from you, but from everything. You're always here. It's a lot. His words stung, but I held his gaze. I'm here because this is my home. Because I love my daughter and my grandchildren. If that's too much for you, then maybe you're the one who doesn't belong here. Claire's breath hitched, and she reached for my hand. Mom, please. Greg didn't mean it like that. Didn't he? I asked, turning to her. Because it sounds like he's been wanting to push me out for a while. And you let him. Claire. Greg leaned forward, his voice rising. That's not fair. Eleanor. I've never said you're not welcome. But let's be real, you hover. You're always telling stories about Henry. Always reminding us how things used to be. It's hard to feel like this is our vacation when it's so tied to your past. His words cut deeper than I expected. Not because they were cruel, but because they held a grain of truth. I did talk about Henry often. I did cling to the memories of this house. But wasn't that my right? This was my home. My history. Greg, I said, my voice low. This house is my past. Yes. But it's also my present. And if you can't respect that, then we have a problem. Claire squeezed my hand, her voice trembling. Greg, stop. Mom's right. This is her home. We were wrong to make her feel like she didn't belong. I was wrong. Greg's face softened. Just a fraction. He leaned back, running a hand through his hair. All right, he said finally. I'm sorry, Eleanor. I didn't mean to hurt you. We're struggling. Okay. And I thought some space might help. The admission hung in the air, raw and unguarded. For the first time, I saw the cracks in their marriage, the strain they'd been hiding. It didn't excuse what they'd done, but it explained it. And in that moment, I realized this wasn't just about me. It was about all of us, trying to find our way back to each other. Let's make a deal, I said, looking between them. We start over. No more assumptions. No more pushing each other away. We talk. We listen. And we respect that this house belongs to all of us. In different ways. Claire nodded, tears in her eyes. Greg hesitated, then gave a small nod. Fair enough, he said. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. The fire crackled, and for the first time in days, the house felt a little more like home. The next morning dawned clear, the sky a piercing blue above the snow-draped mountains. The house was quiet, the kind of stillness that follows a storm both outside and within. I stood at the kitchen window, a mug of coffee warming my hands, watching the sunlight glint off the fresh snow. Claire was still asleep, and Greg had taken the kids sledding down the hill behind the house. Their distant laughter carried through the crisp air, a sound that tugged at my heart. For the first time in days, I felt a flicker of hope. But hope is a fragile thing, and I knew we weren't out of the woods yet. The conversation with Claire and Greg had cleared the air, but words alone couldn't mend what was broken. Trust, like the snow outside, would take time to settle, layer by layer. I set my mug down and headed to the attic, driven by an urge to see the tangible proof of my claim to this house, and maybe to my place in this family. The attic stairs creaked under my weight, the air growing colder as I climbed. The space was cluttered with boxes, old furniture, and memories I hadn't touched in years. I found the safe tucked in a corner, its combination a sequence of numbers Henry and I had chosen together, Claire's birthday. The lock clicked open, and there it was, the deed, yellowed but intact, my name in bold ink. I held it, the paper heavy with meaning. This wasn't just about ownership. It was about legacy, about everything Henry and I had built. I heard footsteps behind me and turned to see Claire, her hair mussed from sleep, her eyes curious. Mom, what are you doing up here? I hesitated, then held up the deed. I needed to see it, I said, to remind myself what this house means. She stepped closer, peering at the paper. You really own it, she said softly, almost to herself. I never knew. I never thought you needed to, I replied. This house was always for you, Claire. For all of us. But after last night, I paused, searching for the right words. I needed to know it was still mine. Her face crumpled, and she sank onto an old trunk. I'm so sorry, Mom. I keep thinking about what I did. How I hurt you. I don't know how to make it right. I sat beside her, the deed still in my hands. You start by being honest, I said. With me. With yourself. Tell me what's going on with you and Greg. Why you felt so desperate for space. She took a shaky breath, her hands twisting in her lap. It's been hard, she admitted. Greg's been distant, working late, always on his phone. The kids are growing up so fast, and I feel like I'm losing them. I thought this trip would fix things, bring us closer. But instead, I pushed you away. Her words echoed my own fears, the fear of losing the people you love, of watching the life you built slip through your fingers. I reached for her hand, squeezing it gently. You're not losing me, I said. But you have to let me in. Claire, I'm not just your mother. I'm a person, with my own hurts and hopes. She nodded, tears spilling down her cheeks. I want to do better, Mom. I want us to be a family again. Then we will, I said, my voice firm. But it starts with small things. Listening. Being here. Really here. We sat in the attic for a long time, surrounded by the ghosts of our past. When we finally went downstairs, the house felt different, warmer. Somehow. Greg and the kids were back, their cheeks pink from the cold, their laughter filling the kitchen. Sophie ran to me, holding out a snowball she'd saved. Grandma, look. It's still perfect. I laughed, taking the snowball. It's cold but a reminder of the storm we'd weathered. It's beautiful, Sophie, I said. And as I looked at Claire, at Greg, at my grandchildren, I knew we had a chance to rebuild not just the house, but the love that held it together. The days that followed were a delicate dance of healing. The house, once a battleground of hurt feelings, began to feel like a home again. Claire made an effort, small, intentional gestures that spoke louder than words. She'd linger in the kitchen to help me wash dishes, ask about my stories of Henry, or sit with me by the fire, listening in a way she hadn't in years. Greg was slower to come around, his apologies wrapped in awkward silences. But he tried. He shoveled the walkway without being asked, fixed a leaky faucet in the guest bathroom, and even joined Sophie and Liam in a snowball fight. His laughter a rare sound. The kids were the easiest to reconnect with. Sophie, at 16, was all sharp edges and quick wit, but she softened when we baked together. Her hands clumsy but eager as we rolled out dough for cinnamon rolls. Liam, quieter at 14, surprised me one evening by asking about his grandfather's old vinyl collection in the den. We spent hours listening to scratched records, his eyes wide as I told him about the dances Henry and I used to have in this very room. But beneath the surface, I knew we were still fragile. The memory of that night in the storm lingered, a shadow that crept into quiet moments. I saw it in Claire's eyes sometimes, a flicker of guilt when she thought I wasn't looking. I felt it in myself, too, the fear that this newfound closeness could shatter with one wrong word. One afternoon, as the sun dipped low, painting the snow in shades of gold, I found Claire in the living room, staring at the Christmas tree. The ornaments glittered, each one a memory, some from Claire's childhood, others from Henry's and my travels. She held a small glass angel, one we'd bought in Venice on our honeymoon. Dad loved this one, she said softly, turning it in her hands. He'd always put it at the top of the tree. He said it reminded him of you, I replied, sitting beside her. His little angel. She smiled, but it was tinged with sadness. I haven't been much of an angel lately. Have I? I took a deep breath, choosing my words carefully. You're human, Claire. We all make mistakes. What matters is what you do next. She nodded, setting the angel back on the tree. I want to do better, Mom. Not just for you, but for Sophie and Liam. For Greg. For me. I want us to be a family, not just people sharing a house. Her words echoed my own longing, and I felt a surge of love for her, fierce and unwavering. Then let's make that happen, I said. But it means being honest, even when it's hard. About what you're feeling, about what you need. She looked at me, her eyes searching. And you'll tell me, too, if I'm messing up again. I laughed, a soft sound that felt like a release. Oh, I'll tell you. Don't worry. That evening, we gathered for a family game night, something we hadn't done in years. Sophie picked Scrabble, and Liam groaned but played anyway, his competitive streak emerging as he spelled out words I didn't even know he knew. Greg surprised us all with a terrible pun that sent Sophie into giggles, and Claire's laughter joined hers, bright and unguarded. I sat back, watching them, my heart full but cautious. This was what I'd wanted a family. Together. In this house. But I knew it wouldn't always be this easy. As the game wound down, Claire caught my eye and smiled. A real smile that reached her eyes. Thanks, Mom, she said quietly, for giving us another chance. I reached for her hand, squeezing it. Always, I said. And in that moment, I believed it. The house, the deed, the storm, they were all part of our story. But they didn't define it. What defined us was this, the choice to keep trying, to keep loving, even when it hurt. The final day of their visit arrived too soon. The sun rising over a world softened by snow and second chances. The house was alive with the chaos of packing Sophie's suitcase, spilling clothes, Liam hunting for his missing earbud, Greg hauling bags to the car. Claire moved through it all with a quiet focus, her glances toward me laced with something new, gratitude, maybe, or understanding. I stood in the kitchen, packing leftovers into containers, my heart a tangle of relief and reluctance. They were leaving, but this time, it didn't feel like an ending. As we gathered for a last breakfast, the table crowded with pancakes and coffee, I looked at my family and saw them differently. Claire, no longer just my daughter, but a woman carrying her own burdens. Greg, flawed but trying, his edges softened by the days we'd spent rebuilding. Sophie and Liam, teetering on the cusp of adulthood, still needing the anchor of family. And me, Eleanor Grayson, 70 years old, a widow, a mother, a woman who'd walked through a storm and come out stronger. Mom, Claire said, breaking the comfortable silence. We've been talking. Greg and I, we want to come back this summer. All of us. Maybe stay longer, if that's okay with you. I set my fork down, my heart lifting. This is your home, too, I said. You're always welcome here. Greg nodded, his expression earnest. We'd like to help out more, too. With the upkeep, the expenses. It's a lot for you to manage alone. It was a small gesture, but it meant the world. For years, I'd carried the weight of this house alone. Not just its maintenance, but its memories. Sharing that burden felt like a gift. Sophie piped up, her eyes bright. Can we plant a garden, Grandma? Like the one you had when Mom was little. I smiled, picturing the old vegetable patch Henry and I had tended. I'd love that, I said. We'll plant tomatoes, just like your mom used to steal off the vine. Claire laughed, a sound that warmed the room. I was terrible, wasn't I? The worst, I teased. And for a moment, we were just a mother and daughter, sharing a memory that belonged to us alone. As they loaded the car, I stood on the porch, the same porch where I'd stood that terrible night in the storm. The air was crisp, the snow sparkling under the morning sun. Claire hugged me tightly, her arms lingering longer than usual. I love you, Mom, she whispered. Thank you for not giving up on me. I could never, I said, my voice thick. You're my daughter. Greg shook my hand, a rare gesture of respect. Sophie and Liam piled on for a group hug, their laughter muffled against my coat. As they drove away, the car disappearing down the snowy road, I felt a peace I hadn't known in years. The house was quiet again, but it wasn't empty. It held the echoes of our laughter, our tears, our promises to try again. I went inside, closing the door against the cold. The deed was back in the safe, but its weight lingered in my mind. It wasn't just about ownership. It was about belonging. This house was mine, but it was also ours, a place where we could falter, forgive, and find our way back to each other. I sat by the fire, the flames low but steady, and thought of Henry. He'd built this house for us, for the family we dreamed of. And though he was gone, his love was still here, in every beam, every memory, every step we took toward healing. The storm had tested us, but it had also shown us what we were made of. Not just a house, but a home. Not just a family, but a bond worth fighting for.